Welcome to the channel where every secret, every betrayal, and every twist of fate is unveiled. Here, ordinary lives hide extraordinary truths, and every relationship carries layers of raw emotion waiting to be exposed. From the illusion of perfect marriages to shadows of hidden pasts, from the toxic twists of family loyalty to moments when trust shatters completely, each story will grip your heart and test your instincts. Witness emotions teetering on the edge, shocking revelations that change everything, and the journey of reclaiming power when betrayal cuts deep. This is where secrets become weapons, heartbreak turns into determination, and every choice matters. If you crave stories of truth, suspense, and unforgettable family drama that leave you breathless, you're in the right place. Subscribe now and join the journey into lives where nothing is as it seems, and every revelation sparks a fire inside. Everything had felt so perfect once, like a picture from a magazine, carefully curated, effortlessly flawless. Every morning began with laughter over breakfast. Every evening ended with quiet conversations that carried the warmth of familiarity. Friends admired the harmony, family envied the connection, and strangers assumed the life had been carved from trust and love. Yet beneath the smiles and the easy routines, subtle whispers of deception started to flicker. They were small things at first, forgotten promises, unexplained absences, late-night calls that ended abruptly. Each instance seemed inconsequential on its own, easily rationalized, easily forgiven. But as days turned into weeks, the puzzle pieces refused to fit. Something hidden, something carefully concealed, was beginning to emerge. It began with the drawer, the one that always stayed slightly ajar, as if inviting attention, yet never meant to be noticed. A misplaced envelope, a photograph that didn't belong, receipts for places that weren't supposed to exist, all tiny intrusions into a life that once seemed sacred. The realization was gradual, creeping like a shadow at dusk, that the perfect life was nothing but a mask. Every conversation replayed in memory now carried undertones that hadn't existed before. Words previously taken at face value were now riddled with double meanings, hints of secrets tucked behind casual laughter. The very foundation of trust, once unwavering, felt unstable, like a bridge trembling under invisible pressure. Dinner conversations, once so comforting, began to feel like subtle performances. Compliments carried an edge of false reassurance. Explanations were padded with half-truths, and every denial seemed rehearsed. The eyes that once held warmth now flickered with hesitation when certain topics arose. It was in the silence between words, in the slight tension of shoulders, in the faint evasions that made the heart tighten without reason. Each day brought more evidence, yet each piece seemed almost too carefully placed, as if daring discovery without surrendering the whole truth. The perfect life so long cherished was unraveling quietly, thread by delicate thread. Friends began to notice it too, though no one could articulate it. There was a subtle change in demeanor, a heaviness where ease once lived, a distraction that carried a dangerous edge. Invitations were subtly avoided, outings declined with excuses that sounded plausible, and the laughter shared with friends began to feel forced. It was as though the world outside could sense the cracks, could feel the pulse of hidden betrayal. Yet every attempt to confront these small anomalies was met with charm, deflection, or feigned confusion. The very art of concealment was breathtaking, masking a reality that only now began to demand attention. Then came the late-night discoveries, the ones that could not be ignored. Hidden messages, carefully deleted logs, accounts with names that carried no familiarity. All hints of a life lived in parallel, a secret sphere that had nothing to do with the family everyone admired. The more each secret revealed itself, the more the illusion shattered. The perfect dinners, the gentle words, the laughter, all had been a carefully constructed facade, a performance meant to conceal motives that now felt almost malicious in their deliberate subtlety. Shock coursed through, mingled with a deep, bitter disappointment, and yet curiosity refused to let go. Each new revelation demanded attention, a need to see the entire scope of betrayal before it could be reconciled, before it could be faced fully. Even familiar spaces began to feel alien. The home that once offered safety now carried an undercurrent of suspicion. Rooms that echoed with shared memories suddenly seemed like stages for deception. Objects once innocuous now bore the weight of implication. A book left open, a note forgotten, a scent that didn't belong. Every small detail became a testament to hidden truths, every overlooked element a clue to unraveling a life carefully disguised as normal. The mind, desperate for clarity, began tracing connections, reconstructing timelines, and piecing together the mosaic of lies that had been meticulously assembled over years. Anger and disbelief mingled with grief. The realization that the perfect life was nothing more than an illusion brought with it a tidal wave of emotion, an intense combination of sorrow, rage, and fear. How could someone so intimately known harbor such secrets? How could love coexist with betrayal so profound? Yet beneath the raw shock, an undeniable clarity began to emerge. The cracks, once invisible, now illuminated the path forward. No longer blind to the subtle betrayals, the world had shifted irreversibly. Awareness replaced naivety, and with it came the first steps toward confronting the darkness that had been carefully hidden behind charm, routine, and the illusion of perfection. The perfect life had never existed, and the truth, bitter as it was, demanded reckoning. It started with something almost innocent, almost trivial, a photograph tucked behind a stack of old magazines, edges curled, faded with time. At first glance it seemed harmless, a relic of another era, but the expression on his face, the presence of someone long forgotten, and the way the light hit the image sparked a curiosity that could not be ignored. That photograph, small and seemingly insignificant, opened a door to a world that had been carefully hidden, a life meticulously buried beneath layers of routine, charm, and deception. The photograph led to a message, a scrap of paper with words written in a hand that felt both familiar and alien. It carried no name, only a date and a phrase, simple yet loaded with meaning. Do not tell anyone. It must remain hidden. The handwriting was his own, precise and controlled, yet the secrecy it implied ignited suspicion. Questions arose, echoing in every quiet corner of the home. What had been kept secret, and why? How much of the life carefully constructed had been built on omissions, on silences that masked deeper truths? Then came the unspoken stories, fragments of conversations remembered differently, moments recalled with subtle inconsistencies, memories that once brought warmth now carried a cold edge, tinged with uncertainty. A laugh shared at a family gathering, a glance exchanged in a hallway, a reassurance whispered late at night, all suddenly seemed part of a larger puzzle, pieces that had never fit until now. The past, once familiar, became a landscape of shadows, its contours unfamiliar and treacherous. It was impossible to ignore the tension that built as the layers were peeled back. The life that had seemed so transparent, so stable, revealed hidden depths, dark and tangled. People who had once seemed peripheral, friends, colleagues, distant relatives, appeared in new contexts, their presence connected to truths that had never been shared. Each revelation carried weight, bending the perception of reality. The world felt colder, more brittle, as if the sun had dimmed and the warmth that had sustained trust was slipping away. Objects became symbols of secrecy. A letter discovered under a drawer, an unopened envelope hidden in the back of a closet, a file mislabeled but revealing everything when finally pried open each artifact, unearthed a truth that demanded attention. The heart raced with every discovery, a mixture of fear, betrayal, and determination, the need to confront the past competing with the instinct to retreat. Each secret uncovered peeled away another layer of the life that had been presented as honest and uncomplicated. Family interactions changed subtly. The way he spoke, the way he avoided certain topics, the nervous mannerisms that had been dismissed as stress or tiredness. Now they were understood as markers, signposts pointing to concealed histories. The ease that had once filled rooms was replaced with a tension that could not be ignored. Every smile seemed practiced, every reassurance a veneer, and every conversation became a test of intuition and perception. The shadows of the past stretched into every moment, making familiar spaces feel strange and alien. It was not just the discoveries themselves that stung, but the realization of their magnitude. Years of omissions, halved, truths, and hidden alliances were suddenly illuminated. The man known so intimately carried secrets that had the power to redefine the present entirely. The photograph, the message, the unspoken stories. These were not anomalies. They were evidence of a life lived in parallel, a world operating beneath the surface of the one everyone else could see. And in that realization, a sense of betrayal deepened, cutting sharper than any argument, more potent than any confrontation could have been. Questions multiplied. Why had these truths been hidden? What had motivated the silence? Who else had been part of the deception? The answers were elusive, each discovery only prompting further inquiry, yet the necessity of understanding pressed relentlessly. The past was no longer past. It had returned with full force, demanding acknowledgement and reckoning. Every cherished memory was filtered through a lens of doubt, and the illusion of stability was replaced by an urgent need for clarity and justice. And in the midst of this unraveling, there was a strange clarity. The darkness of hidden truths illuminated the path forward. Awareness replaced naivety. Knowledge, though painful, became a weapon. Every secret, every revelation became a step toward confronting the reality that had been carefully concealed. The past could no longer be ignored, and the truth, no matter how painful, could no longer remain buried. The shadows of the hidden past had emerged, and nothing would ever feel the same again. The world that had once felt safe began to twist in ways that were impossible to ignore. Those closest, the ones trusted without question, revealed unexpected roles in the deception that had been carefully concealed for years. Conversations that had always been easy and familiar now carried an unspoken tension, as if every word was a test, every glance a challenge. Alliances shifted in ways that stunned, and the comfort of bloodlines, of shared history, no longer guaranteed protection from betrayal. It started subtly. A cousin offering a seemingly innocent observation, a sibling asking questions that felt too pointed, a parent's gaze lingering longer than usual. At first, the mind tried to rationalize these moments, dismissing them as coincidences, as misunderstandings. But the more the clues accumulated, the harder it became to ignore the truth. There were secrets held in the shadows of family gatherings, whispers exchanged behind closed doors, and glances loaded with meanings that could not be deciphered in a casual encounter. The sense of safety that had always been taken for granted evaporated slowly, leaving a chilling uncertainty in its place. The husband, the one whose presence had once defined stability and love, now seemed surrounded by a web spun from familiar hands. Family members who had been assumed allies became conspirators of omission, withholding information, facilitating half-truths, and at times deliberately misleading. Every story retold, every memory recounted, carried a subtle distortion that hinted at deeper, hidden motives. Loyalty, once unquestioned, was no longer absolute. It had fractured under the weight of deceit. It was painful to see the transformation. Parents who had seemed protective, siblings who had seemed supportive, cousins who had seemed trustworthy. Each revealed a side that had been hidden behind affection and smiles. Some were complicit knowingly, motivated by self-interest or fear, while others seemed unaware of the full scope, but still played roles that perpetuated the betrayal. The realization was dizzying. Family was not a shield against deception, nor a guarantee of honesty. Even bloodlines, the ties that were supposed to ensure unity, could not prevent the intrusion of lies. Tension thickened during gatherings. Conversations became loaded with subtext, laughter tinged with nervousness, casual remarks carrying the weight of interrogation. Every exchange required caution. Every interaction demanded vigilance. The home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a stage where hidden alliances dictated behavior, and every gesture might conceal ulterior motives. The intimacy of shared history turned fragile, as though the foundation of trust had been hollowed out by years of secret maneuvering. The betrayals were as diverse as they were shocking. A sibling who had protected secrets instead of exposing them. A parent who minimized warnings and dismissed concerns. A relative who subtly encouraged deception while appearing supportive. Each act, whether intentional or complicit, revealed that the family had become an arena where loyalty was conditional, where alliances shifted like sand, and where love was sometimes weaponized to obscure truth. The intimacy of family, once a comfort, now carried the sting of manipulation. It was impossible not to feel the weight of isolation. Surrounded by familiar faces, there was a pervasive sense of being watched, evaluated, and tested. The support that had been assumed to exist vanished at the first hint of confrontation, replaced with defensiveness, diversion, or denial. Every interaction was a reminder that betrayal was no longer abstract. It was tangible, close, and personal. The shock was not only in the husband's actions, but in the realization that those closest could also harbor roles that perpetuated the deception. Anger and disbelief became constant companions. The mind raced with questions. Why had family allowed this to happen? Why had no one intervened sooner? Who had chosen secrecy over truth? Every answer seemed to reveal yet another layer of complicity, another facet of the web spun around trust. The emotional strain was relentless, mixing heartbreak, fury, and an urgent need to uncover the full scope of deceit. Each betrayal demanded recognition. Each complicity demanded reckoning. And yet, within the chaos, clarity began to emerge. Understanding the dynamics of deception provided a roadmap, however painful, to navigate the fractured relationships. The revelations, though shocking, illuminated the reality that survival required awareness, strategy, and resilience. Family ties, once assumed as protection, were now understood as battlegrounds where loyalty had to be earned, truth had to be uncovered, and trust had to be rebuilt carefully, if at all. The ties that were supposed to shield proved vulnerable, and the betrayal from those closest sharpened the edges of reality in a way that could not be ignored. The tension was palpable in every corner of the home, invisible but heavy, pressing on the chest with a weight that made every breath feel calculated. Anger and heartbreak collided, their edges sharp and unyielding, slicing through moments that had once felt ordinary. Disbelief hovered in the air like a storm, unpredictable and threatening, each glance carrying the potential to ignite emotions that had been simmering just below the surface. Nothing could be taken at face value anymore. Even the simplest gestures were loaded with meaning, every word a potential trap. Conversations became battlegrounds. Questions once casual were now laced with suspicion, and answers, no matter how plausible, carried a hidden tension that refused to be ignored. The voice that had once reassured now seemed rehearsed, its calmness masking something darker. Words were measured, gestures monitored, silences stretched longer, heavy with implications that could not be named aloud. Every exchange felt like a test, a challenge to see if the truth could slip through, even for a moment. The home, once a sanctuary, had transformed into a landscape of unease, a place where emotional landmines were hidden beneath familiar routines. Every glance held the potential for revelation. A look away too long, a hesitation in a nod, a subtle shift in posture, it all spoke volumes to eyes that had learned to read the language of deceit. The husband whose presence had once felt comforting now radiated something unrecognizable, a tension that made the heart race in sudden, unpredictable waves. The past, once neatly compartmentalized, pressed into the present, and every memory became tinged with suspicion. Trust had become fragile, a delicate thread that threatened to snap under the weight of unspoken truths. Anger surged at the realization of how deeply deception had penetrated daily life. Moments that had seemed mundane were now revisited with new understanding, each detail a puzzle piece revealing the extent of betrayal. The mind replayed events endlessly, the casual dismissal of concerns, the secretive phone calls, the subtle inconsistencies in stories. Each memory became evidence, each recollection a small proof of the larger truth. The life once believed to be shared was fractured, distorted by secrets that no one had dared to reveal. Heartbreak intertwined with anger, a complex tangle that left no room for clarity or peace. Love that had been freely given now felt tainted by betrayal, its warmth shadowed by doubt. Every act of kindness, every affectionate gesture, carried a whisper of uncertainty. Was it genuine or carefully constructed to conceal the truth? The question itself became a torment, gnawing at the edges of reason, demanding vigilance, demanding confrontation. Even laughter, once a source of comfort, now echoed with ambiguity, as if mocking the innocence of trust. Disbelief remained the constant undercurrent, seeping into every thought. How could someone so intimately known harbor such secrets? How could a bond built over years, nurtured with care and devotion, conceal darkness so profound? The mind searched for explanations, any rationale to reconcile love with betrayal. But each attempt only revealed further inconsistencies, amplifying the sense of shock and urgency. The world, once familiar and predictable, had shifted. Every interaction carried the weight of potential revelation. Every shadow suggested concealment. Determination grew alongside the emotional turmoil, a quiet yet powerful force that refused to be subdued. Anger and heartbreak fueled a need to see the truth, to uncover what had been hidden, no matter how painful. Each discovery, each suspicious sign strengthened resolve, transforming confusion and despair into action. The desire for clarity became relentless, a driving force that demanded attention, demanded confrontation, demanded acknowledgement of the reality that had been meticulously concealed. Even the smallest interactions became significant. A brush of hands, a fleeting glance, the tone of a voice, they all carried potential clues. The mind tracked patterns, remembered inconsistencies, and anticipated evasions. Every detail mattered, no matter how insignificant it had once seemed. Suspicion sharpened perception, turning ordinary days into exercises in observation, turning conversations into subtle interrogations, turning the home into a theater of tension where emotions teetered on the edge of eruption. The emotional pressure was unrelenting. Anger, heartbreak, and disbelief collided continuously, but they also illuminated what had been hidden, revealing the depth of deception and the layers of betrayal that had been carefully constructed over time. The sharpness of emotion became both burden and tool, forcing awareness, demanding vigilance, and guiding the path toward understanding and confrontation. The world had become a precarious place, every moment suspended on the edge of revelation, every breath weighed down by the intensity of what had been concealed. The emotions teetered, unsteady yet undeniable, and nothing could restore the calm that had once existed. The day began like any other, calm and unremarkable, yet it carried an undercurrent that demanded attention. What appeared ordinary quickly gave way to the extraordinary, as if the universe had chosen this moment to peel back the final layer of illusion. There it was, a single discovery, small in form but immense in consequence, a secret hidden so carefully that it had eluded notice for years. Holding it, seeing it, understanding it, felt like staring directly into the center of a storm that had been building quietly but relentlessly. The secret was not something easily dismissed. It was buried in plain sight, hidden in the routine, yet unmistakable once recognized. A document, a message, a trace of evidence so concrete that denial was impossible. The weight of it pressed down with sudden intensity, a tangible force that made the heart pound and the stomach twist. Every memory of trust, every recollection of intimacy, every belief in shared life and mutual love was suddenly reframed, colored by the knowledge of this hidden truth. The illusion of a perfect, stable marriage crumbled instantly, leaving only fragments of reality scattered in its wake. Shock rippled through every thought, making it impossible to focus, impossible to breathe normally. The mind raced, replaying events that had once seemed mundane, examining conversations and interactions with a new lens. Words that had been comforting were now sinister, gestures that had been tender now hollow. The realization that the life lived together had been built, at least in part, on deception was almost unbearable. It was a betrayal so profound that it touched every corner of existence, altering perceptions not only of the present but also of the past. Emotions collided in a violent mixture. Anger surged like a wildfire, fierce and consuming, demanding acknowledgement and confrontation. Heartbreak tore at the edges of thought, sharp and unyielding, mourning the loss of innocence and trust. Disbelief refused to release its grip, insisting that what was seen could not be real, yet knowing deep down that the evidence left no room for doubt. The body reacted before the mind, shaking with tension, muscles taut with the need to act, to respond, to reclaim some sense of control in a world that had been irreversibly shifted. Every relationship was suddenly reevaluated through the lens of this revelation. The husband, whose presence had once been the center of stability and love, now appeared as someone unrecognizable, a figure intertwined with deception so intricate that comprehension itself was exhausting. Family, friends, and even casual acquaintances were reconsidered, as though each interaction might have played a role in concealing or supporting the secret. The reverberations of discovery extended far beyond the immediate relationship, touching the fabric of social circles, routines, and daily life. There was no comfort in confrontation, no relief in exposing the truth immediately. The moment demanded processing, demanded recognition, demanded the careful parsing of every detail. Even the act of thinking became deliberate, as if any impulsive decision could further destabilize an already fragile emotional equilibrium. The mind oscillated between fury and fear, grief and calculation, heartbreak and determination. Every instinct screamed for reaction, yet every thought demanded patience and strategy. The secret itself was a revelation of character, of motives long hidden, of decisions that had been made in secrecy and silence. It carried implications that were far-reaching, reshaping understanding of past choices and revealing patterns that had been invisible until now. It explained inconsistencies, illuminated the shadowy corners of behavior, and provided context for lies that had seemed isolated. The depth of deception was staggering, a carefully constructed facade maintained over time with remarkable precision. There was also a quiet, unnerving clarity in the aftermath of discovery. While the revelation shattered trust and love, it also illuminated paths forward, choices that could be made with full knowledge of reality. The illusion was gone, but awareness replaced ignorance. Every action, every decision could now be measured against the unvarnished truth, allowing steps to be taken with precision, even amidst the tumult of emotion. The betrayal, raw and undeniable, had given power in its exposure, even as it carried a sting that could not be erased. The realization settled like a cold wind through the bones. Life, as once understood, no longer existed. Love, marriage, and trust had been irrevocably altered, and the consequences of hidden deception stretched in every direction. The truth was now undeniable, unavoidable, and irreversible, a turning point that demanded acknowledgement and response. The secret had been found, and the world would never feel the same again. The truth had been uncovered, raw and undeniable, and the world felt both heavier and clearer at the same time. Every hidden detail, every betrayal, every secret that had been carefully concealed no longer carried the power to confuse or mislead. Instead, those revelations became instruments of strength, tools to navigate a world forever altered by deception. The life that had once been assumed, built on trust and familiarity, had been irrevocably transformed, and with that transformation came a resolve that could not be shaken. Every choice that followed was deliberate, measured, and guided by the knowledge that had been unearthed. No longer could actions be dictated by ignorance or blind loyalty. Every decision carried weight, every move was calculated, and every interaction was an opportunity to reclaim control. The house that had once felt like a stage for secrets now became a place of strategy, where clarity replaced doubt and observation replaced naivete. Even moments of solitude were charged with purpose, the mind cataloging truths, connections, and leverage, assembling a framework to confront the consequences of betrayal with precision. Anger remained, but it was tempered now by focus. Heartbreak lingered, sharp yet channeled into determination. The disbelief that had once clouded perception had evolved into vigilance, a careful watching for signs, reactions, and responses that would reveal intentions and hidden agendas. Every conversation became a tool, every gesture a test, every reaction a piece of evidence. The power of awareness replaced vulnerability, and the world, though still filled with deception, could now be navigated with confidence. The husband, once a figure of trust and companionship, was now understood in full context. A person capable of hiding darkness behind charm, capable of weaving lies into the fabric of everyday life. That knowledge, painful as it was, no longer imposed paralysis. Instead, it provided clarity. Every deception revealed a path forward. Every secret uncovered a step toward reclaiming authority over a life that had been compromised. Each revelation became a weapon of empowerment, turning vulnerability into strategy, heartbreak into calculated resolve. Even family interactions were transformed. Where loyalty had once been assumed, it now had to be earned, evaluated, and tested. The web of relationships, previously confusing and suffocating, could now be analyzed and navigated with foresight. Hidden alliances, once sources of anxiety, were recognized for what they were, and boundaries were established with precision. The realization that deception could come from blood and proximity no longer caused despair. It fueled caution and clarity, guiding steps toward protection, justice, and self-preservation. Every action taken in this new awareness was intentional. Words were no longer offered lightly, gestures no longer given without purpose. Observations became a form of intelligence gathering, interactions transformed into opportunities to gauge truthfulness and loyalty. Even silence became powerful, a tool to test reactions, to provoke honesty, and to assert control over the narrative that had long been dictated by lies. Each moment became an exercise in reclaiming authority, in asserting that deception no longer held dominion. The process of reclaiming power was not instantaneous. It was deliberate, unfolding in layers as each piece of the hidden world was examined, confronted, and incorporated into a strategy of survival and dominance. The shock of betrayal, once overwhelming, had been absorbed, tempered by vigilance and sharpened into clarity. The heartbreak that had threatened to consume was now channeled into purposeful action. The anger, once chaotic, had become a guide, directing every decision and interaction. The darkness of deception could no longer control the day-to-day reality. It had been illuminated, dissected, and turned into leverage. Even in moments of reflection, the transformation was undeniable. Confidence replaced fear, awareness replaced confusion, strength replaced vulnerability. The life that had been fractured by lies could now be navigated with a careful, deliberate authority. Hidden truths were no longer sources of anxiety. They were weapons, turning the pain of betrayal into power, and ensuring that every step forward was guided by strategy, clarity, and unflinching resolve. The path ahead, though uncertain, was now mine to command. Every decision, every confrontation, every interaction carried the weight of knowledge, and with it, the certainty that betrayal no longer held sway. Each revelation, once a wound, had become armor, shielding from further deception while forging the determination to act decisively. The world had changed, but so had the resolve, and nothing could take that power away. Thank you for diving deep into this world of secrets, betrayal, and shocking truths. If this story left your heart racing and your mind spinning, make sure to hit like, share with someone who loves suspense, and subscribe so you never miss a story where every twist of fate unravels hidden truths. Your next unforgettable journey into raw emotions, family drama, and shocking revelations is just a click away. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and join us for the next story that will leave you breathless.